the Texas A&M Aggies preview video. Guys, I'm Christian Hunt. That guy over there is
Chris Baca.
Welcome into the I-80 Boys College Football Show. We got a good one for you today, Chris. Before we get started, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on this video and tell us why Chris is old and I'm fat. I can't wait to hear it, by God. All right, let's get down to business here, Chris. So obviously we know Texas A&M, Mike Elko's coming over from Duke to kind of clean things up. And listen, he's been brought over to have these Aggies reach their potential. What's that potential, you might ask? Well, they're starving for some playoff success, right? Now that the playoffs have expanded, they expect to be competing there. They're not expecting to win 5, 6, 7 games a year, right? That's not what A&M is paying all this money for, right? I think the Achilles heel for Texas A&M the last couple of years has been their offense, right? Elko obviously is a defensive guy, and Chris will tell us about their defense here in a minute. Look, I think, K-State offensive coordinator Colin Klein's coming over to run this offense. For those who don't know, K-State had a top 25 offense last year, right? And he has a lot more talent to work with at A&M than he did at K-State. So I think it'll be good. To me, it starts with Connor Weigman. He missed most of last year with injuries, or with an injury, I should say. But in the 3.5 games he did play, Chris, he managed to put up over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. So the kid can play. I mean, we know he's talented. We know he can play. With a new coach, new system, what are they going to be able to do in the first year? That's the question that a lot of people have. The running game returns their three-headed monster, Moss, Daniels, and Owens. They combined for 1,700 yards last year and 14 total touchdowns, so they're a pretty good trio back there. Receiver room, they took a bit of a hit, right? But they did return Jade Walker and Noah Thomas. They both combined for about 950 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. Probably one of the worst parts of this offense, Chris, was the O-line last year. Been pretty bad. They have some talent there, as they always do when we talk about Texas A&M. So maybe a new coach, and some transfers will be able to kind of clean it up this year. I think that, in today's day and age, it's great that you can run the football, but at some point you got to be able to pass protect, and you got to keep Weigman healthy. So, time will tell how they're going to be able to hold up, this year.
Yeah, Christian, I'll tell you what, you touched on it. The defense last year was the bright spot for A&M. They gave up 22.1 points per game, which was 36 in the country. They only gave up less than 300 yards per game, which was 9th in the country. Even better, which was really impressive here until I dug into the stat, they had 42 sacks last year. So that was 6th in the country. So that was very, very impressive. They can get to the quarterback. I don't expect a lot to change this year. And speaking of this year, they did add a major piece in the portal. That was the defensive lineman for Purdue. I think his name is Nick Skirton. He was huge last year in the Big Ten, played on a bad Purdue team, but they got him they got him this offseason. So that'll be a huge addition there. They also keep Shamir Turner, DJ Hicks, and Shamir Stewart. So they return quite a bit on defense as well. The big question I have, though, is how they're going to replace All-American linebacker Edgerrin Cooper. They did add, though, Florida transfer Scooby Williams, so he'll help fill that role. And then safety Bryce Anderson, we know he's a stud. But the quarterback position was a little bit of a problem last year. They did give up some yards through the air last season, so it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out this year. I do expect A&M, though, to get to the quarterback. Like I said, they're really, really good at that. I don't expect much to change under Elko either. You mentioned that he's a defensive guy, and you're 100% correct about that. So let's jump into the schedule here, Christian, and I'll give you my thoughts on this. You're going to be kind of shocked, and I think some of the people watching this will be a little shocked on my record, because I think A&M is one of these really hard teams to predict this year. Just with the new coach, the offense was kind of up and down last year. Vegas has them at 8.5 wins. I have them going 8-4, and maybe that doesn't blow anybody away, but who I have winning and losing, or who they win and lose to here, will be kind of interesting. So they start off the season, Notre Dame. That'll be a big game. A&M is actually, believe it or not, favored in this game. I have them losing this first one. I do think it'll be a really good game. But then they play McNeese. They should be able to beat them. Then you travel on the road, big test at Florida, at the Swamp. I also have A&M dropping this game to Florida. That may shock some people, probably including Christian, because as I harp on the Gators, it seems like on every show. So, but they dropped that game. I have them dropping that game, obviously. So you got Bowling Green, you got Arkansas. I think they win both of those. And then you got Mizzou, who I'm pretty high on. I have them dropping that game to Missouri. Then you go on the road at Mississippi State. Now, I know everybody wants to laugh at Mississippi State. Not the easiest place to play, though. They'll have those stupid cowbells going and all that crap. But that should be a win for A&M. A&M's a more talented team there. I do have them beating LSU next. I know that may shock some people as well, depending on what you think about LSU this year. Then you go on the road at South Carolina. I have A&M winning that one. You got New Mexico State. They should be able to win that one, even though New Mexico State wasn't too bad a team last year. They did lose their head coach, though. And then you go on the road at the barn at Auburn. I have them dropping that one, which is crazy. Then I have them turn around and beating Texas here. So this is a very up and down prediction here. I think A&M is going to be one of those teams this year that is, like I just said, Christian, I think they're going to be very up and down. So I want to hear your thoughts on the record prediction here. I doubt you have them going 8-4, and I doubt you have the wins and losses like I do.
Chris, I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to say other than the fact I do actually have them going 8-4. For those that don't know, me and Chris don't consult when we do this. We like to kind of surprise each other. I have slightly different losses. I went in a different direction with this assignment. Okay. So Notre Dame, yeah, obviously I penciled that as a loss. Missouri, penciled that as a loss. Texas is a loss. And then I said a surprise loss somewhere else. Like you said, I mean, got to play LSU, got to play on the road at Florida, got to play on the road at South Carolina and at Auburn. There's definitely some losable games in there. It's the SEC first-time coach, not a first-time coach, but first-year coach in Mike Elko. So there's a lot of things there where it's, very easy where you could say, hey, if the defense plays really good, but the offense has a really bad game or whatever have you, and they stall, or vice versa, in some of these bigger matchups where the defense gets cooked and the offense has to get into a barn burner like we saw at times last year, then it can be very interesting. So I think, again, 8-4 is kind of where I have them at. That's where I felt comfortable. So I totally agree with you on that, Chris. Let me ask you this, if you don't mind, Chris. What is your ceiling and what is your floor for A&M this year?
Good question. I like I said, I think this was one of the toughest teams I personally have had to predict this year. Just obviously, as you can see, I'm kind of all over the place with A&M as far as their wins and losses. I think the floor is probably a 5 or 6 win season. Why do I say that? You mentioned it. A lot of tough road games here. The SEC is a tough environment to play week in and week out. There really is no such thing other than maybe Mississippi State, Vandy, as an easy game, really. I think South Carolina isn't an easy place to play either. So they could definitely drop a game like that. Or like I said, I have them losing to Florida. But as far as the ceiling goes, man, I would say probably if the offense gets going, I just still don't see how they can probably win 10 games, Christian. I say a 9-3 type of season would be great if they could do that under a first-year coach and Elko coming over to the SEC. It's a lot different than the ACC. I do think the defense will be really good, so they're going to be a tough out. That's why I think like teams like Auburn, Florida, South Carolina, Mississippi State, I mean, these are games all on the road, and defense travels, Christian. So we do know that. So I want to flip, though, over to you. What do you think their floor and ceiling is this season?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. I think, again, for the floor portion of it, I do think, 5-6 wins. I mean, again, these are none of these are gimme games except for like maybe McNeese and New Mexico State. I know, New Mexico State had, I think, a pretty good year last year.
They beat Auburn too. Yeah,
they beat Auburn. A lot of their coaches and their quarterback is gone from that team, if I recall right. I can never remember New Mexico State. They always blend together for me, honestly. But I digress. Those are going to should be easy dubs for A&M. In LSU, you talked about it. What's LSU going to be this year, right? What's Missouri going to be this year? Can they follow the success that they've had, Missouri the last year? Can they keep building upon that? Same thing with LSU. Can they keep, can they replace, their Heisman winning quarterback, Jaden Daniels with, Nussmeier. I think I've seen him play very limited and he looks pretty good, but, how does he go week in, week out? How does he going to deal on the road at arguably one of the toughest places to play in America if you talk to, EA Sports? But in all honesty, there's a lot of questions there that make it very difficult. Now, on the flip side of that, you could look at it, depending on how you look at it, Notre Dame has to come play them at home, right? So Notre Dame, again, A&M's favored in that game. They might be able to shock Notre Dame right off the rip, right? They might be able to travel on the road and beat Florida on the at the Swamp. You go all the way through Bowling Green, Arkansas. They might be able to go on a run and win 9-10 games this year. I could see it. It just really depends on how the ball bounces. Can they stay healthy? And can that offense really get clicking? And can the defense continue doing what Elko wants them to do?